In the last episode, we heard from Neil and Lawrence about the baseliners and Red Kites, as well as the way in which their relationship between their sexualities and sporting identities has evolved over the years. In this episode, we dive deeper with discussions around homophobia, the importance of role models, and what a positive, inclusive sporting future looks like for the queer community. I did want to touch on experiences of homophobia in sport, if you're happy to talk about that. Lawrence, we start with you. In that time where you weren't involved in badminton, had you experienced homophobia before? And if so, had that been in badminton or had that been through other sports?
I'd say it was school-defined sport to me. Grew up in Gloucester. Gloucester's a heavily rugby town, a city even, and rugby is the gold standard. And if you're not doing rugby, similar to what you were talking about, then you're not doing anything of value. You're just doing something else. And if you're doing something else, then it means you're different. And if you're different, then it means you're weird. And then if you're weird, then it means you're something else. And it just kind of kept that trail. And then if you're not good even at the other stuff that is available. So even if you're like, I remember you literally kind of went in your sets, got changed all in the same changing room, but then it was like, right, rugby boys that way, everyone else that way. So if you ended up in that final category of not being all of those things, you were immediately labelled as all sorts of things. And I was already being labelled as gay anyway. So that just further confirmed to the people who were bullying me that that's exactly what I was. So you get completely pigeonholed into this sense of like, that is the only thing you're going to be able to be, and that's the only sport you're ever going to access. Lord forbid you even made any attempt to be in any other thing, even if you like. The fact that people found out I did play badminton immediately got attached to gay because it's got feathers and therefore it must be gay. If they were feather boas, I'd understand. But they and I was always saying to you before, badminton's hardcore. Badminton's a hardcore sport. And the amount of people that have come up to me and said that afterwards and said like, oh my God, I didn't realise actually like that shuttlecocks hurt if they hit you, and that you're not going to pull a punch. Like, I'm not going to not smash it at you if I've got the opportunity to. And there's quite a few people that come to the first couple of times that go, oh God, like this isn't just us kind of playing on the lawn type thing. This is a competitive sport of which there are rules, in which there are consequences, in which there are like safety element. And I think that represents the skills that you get, that you miss out on as a gay person if you're not involved in the gold standard sport of whatever is being chosen as the thing in that place where you live. I wouldn't say that I was homophobically abused because of sport, but it didn't help. Sport didn't add anything in terms of a level of protection. Yeah,
and it didn't exhibit itself as this is somewhere you can come and you can be yourself and you can be safe and you can be supported.
No, I didn't choose badminton if you really go into it because my parents put me in there.
Okay.
It was just the one that I hated the least. You know, like I did gymnastics and I didn't like that. I did a bit of tennis and I was good at that. And I did a couple of like private lessons, but then the club that I went to was very posh, which was lovely. But then ultimately my parents were like, we can't afford to keep sending you there now. So you're going to have to pick badminton or tennis. So I stayed with badminton because that was where my longest term kind of connections were. But it definitely wasn't a safe zone.
And for you, Neil, did you talked about football earlier being massive in North Wales and then rugby as well to a lesser extent. Did you have to kind of go through those sports at school, and when you were going through them, did you experience homophobia in them?
Yeah, so I'd say I have a similar experience to Lawrence, but also slightly different in that I've always loved all sorts of sport. And so, you know, for me, it was, I enjoyed playing football. I enjoyed playing rugby. I enjoyed any sport you gave me. I think I've always enjoyed the competitive element. And I think that's something that I still bring to a lot of aspects of my life. But I've always enjoyed sport. But like Lawrence said, there was a certain type of person you needed to be to play football or rugby or, do athletics. It was very much a hyper-masculine, people who they particularly liked were the ones that would play it, in whether that's sort of for the town or at school. And I learned very early on, that even though I enjoyed those things, I was not accepted in those sports. I think now it's very much, especially football. I see in football there's a lot that has changed in the last 20 years. They talk a lot about sort of anti-racism, anti-homophobia, and I think those are things that, because it's it is a national sport and people are so passionate and sometimes say things that they wish they hadn't. Those campaigns are something that I thoroughly support. But yeah, I got called all sorts of names in school, and it was never pleasant, obviously. And I used to dread going to the sports lessons, because in my school it was very much we're doing this sport today, and you have no choice in the matter. So I had times where, because I didn't want to play the football game because of the people that were playing, I was made to do cross country on my own. Basically, what's that doing? It's basically ostracizing me even further.
Yeah.
It's
torture. I mean, it could be seen as a form of torture.
That's awful.
Yeah, I mean, it's reinforcing that sport is a punishment. You didn't want to do football, so you have to do this. And then we can't help but have in our heads that, that association between that negative experience and physical activity. So.
Yeah, and I think it's a shame that, I hope it doesn't happen to the same degree now, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does, because I think sport is such a wonderful thing, and it brings so many life lessons to people. And I think I think it should be something that everyone should have at least one sport that they're super passionate about, because it really does change your life and your life aspects. But yeah, I think that's it goes back to the point where I saw tennis as an escape, because it was very much me and my friend. We played almost all the time after school. The one thing I would say is that my friend now is openly gay as well. And, we used to get kind of the same abuse because we enjoyed that particular sport. Again, reflecting what Lauren said, it was very much if you don't play football or rugby, then everything else is lesser. Sort of if I go to my adult life, I think in these traditional clubs, like Lauren said about this tennis is very much like has been seen as quite an elitist sport, and very much for sort of the upper middle class, people in this country. And I think because we're in Wales, it slightly doesn't have the same feel as that. And every club that I've gone to, I haven't experienced open homophobia. I haven't been called anything, but I have had senses where people know, and they've treated me slightly differently.
Yeah.
And it's those unconscious biases that I think we still need to fight in traditional clubs. And I'm hoping that clubs like the Red Kites and Baseliners help, people to rethink how they treat all of their members, not just the gay members or the lesbian members, but, the teenagers who maybe have sort of an identity crisis with their gender, or people who might be transitioning. Those things, unfortunately, are kind of going backwards slightly. But I really hope that the clubs like ours can help people just rethink how they act around all of their members.
Because I think my experience of then connecting as an older adult with a already established sports group and enjoying and feeling established in that, and then interacting with other members of the LGBT community in different contexts. So like I'm part of the choir, the perception of the sports groups are still that
it still exists
the
now.
fear of like sport, and that sense of like the damage that people have done to LGBT people around sport is huge when you then attach it to health inequalities and what that means for people who are aged, in that we're all getting older, it comes for us all, and there is huge amounts of people that don't do a sport that they could have potentially really excelled at, if not just had a really nice time and maintained their body, and will never get that opportunity now because of that fear of what sport is, when actually we're really trying to kind of show people that it's sport but it's not that sport. It's
Yeah.
not the sport that you remember. It's not the one that's going to kind of chastise you and make you feel all these really complex feelings.
Hopefully just the existence of the clubs
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that you're able to attract new members suggests that progress is being made.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that outside of the clubs you're involved with, you have seen progress being made in sports?
I mean, just for the, I've touched upon this before. In the tennis world, it's very much still, I'd say that from the male side, it's still way behind where it should be.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot to do with fear around endorsements. I think it's to do around, again, perception of, sport being a hyper-masculine thing where, if you come out gay, that somehow means that you're less of a man, which is completely untrue, obviously. And I think, it has a lot to do. It has a lot to go to maybe think about some campaigns, maybe to try and change things. But I think because tennis is very much there is one tour, and then all the players play in that particular tour. There's no sort of different leagues. Yeah, for very much the male side, it has so much further to go. The women, I think, are doing an amazing job, and Billie Jean King is an idol of mine. She's not just done a lot for women's sport and women's tennis. It's also just being an openly bisexual woman. I think that changed so much, and I know a lot of people who identify as LGBT and play tennis. They see her as, I think all of them see her as their idol. Unfortunately, Martina used to be one, but we won't go there. She's got anti-trans views, unfortunately, which I do not share.
I think the fact that we are about to host a Euro Gay Games in Cardiff makes me feel like that's, there's a real, I can't imagine that happening 20 years ago. I'm so glad that it's going to happen. I'm so glad that we're going to host it. I'm really excited by that. But should we be othering ourselves? Should we be in separate competitions, or should it be something that's kind of more aligned to everyone's involved? Recently, in the last 10 years, I think there's been a lack of ability to debate such things. I think it's been kind of and social media's driven it, kind of that black and white, it has to be this, it has to be that. And I don't know whether gay sports should be necessarily in its own separate category. Should we all be together? I don't know. I love the fact that there's safe spaces. I love the fact that we have our separate group, and I love the fact that people feel safe in that group. Why can't we just feel safe in every group that we go to? Why do we have to be in kind of a separate thing? But
is it like a necessary step to get to a point where one day we don't need those clubs?
Is the goal that eventually the Red Kites will be disbanded because we'll be part of a really wider Cardiff group? I don't know.
Or that you set such a positive, welcoming example that actually Red Kites,
it stays
your
forever,
heterosexual membership increases.
And we do have people that identify straight who have played with us and that continue to play with us. So we don't discriminate out. We allow anyone to, and that's part of the reason why we changed our name, so that we could include everyone that would ever want to play with us. There's no gendering, there's no you don't play with anyone in particular, you don't play with anyone in particular thing. There's no changing rooms, there's no obligation to be kind of naked at any point. So do you know what I mean? Like all of those things that traditionally would kind of make it more gendered and heteronormative are not there. So has sport got better? I have no idea. I couldn't tell you. And I don't know whether that's a sign that it isn't gotten better, to be honest.
I mean, is it just a gut feeling? And if you don't have that gut feeling, then clearly there's still distance for sport to travel, isn't there? So you were talking about Billie Jean King there. If you were to kind of rewind, put yourselves back in your shoes when you were a kid, had there been in tennis, in badminton, a gay man who was at the top of the sport, they were excelling and they were openly gay. What kind of a difference do you think that might have been able to make for you, having that role model, and what difference in the future, if someone is in that position, might it make to young people?
My badminton role model was my sister, because she was older, so she was doing it before me. So it would have been nice to have someone who was a professional. Do you know what I mean? Like she was just 2 years older than me. She wasn't kind of that much further, but it would have been really nice to have known that there was a professional out there, because then I had something to strive for. I suppose I didn't have a goal. My sister had a goal because she knew that there was always a space for her to go, whereas I didn't know that I had a space to go. I just knew that I was okay at it, and I didn't hate it, and I like carry on doing it. But there was no end goal. There was nowhere to strive for. So I suppose that probably limited my goal and what I wanted to achieve in badminton.
I think for me, it probably would have been monumental, to be honest. I think, I very much, I think, we've talked about it already, is that it's the male side of tennis still has a long way to go. I think if I had seen somebody who was, in the top 20, who was openly gay and was accepted that way, and, it wasn't a big deal, then I think that would have changed a lot of things for me, because obviously my love for the sport, it's there and it's been there for a very long time. But I think if I think back to, when I was sort of 14, 15 and I'd been playing only just for a few years, I think I would have felt a bit braver maybe to actually make the connection between the sport and my identity. I think, I've always kind of seen them as separate things up until the point where, the baseline was just created. But I think I might have actually come out sooner maybe, because I would have seen somebody who was successful and was openly gay. I think if I'd seen someone who loved the sport as much as I do, then I might have come out sooner. I could have been braver. But
Do you think you would have played more?
I mean, I don't think if that was possible, to be honest, because I was playing so much. But
basically, do you think you would have gone further in tennis? Do you think you would have gone pro?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I think I came to it quite late. So, most professionals start at sort of 6, 7 years old, and I was already in secondary school when I started. And I'm not sure if that would have helped that side, because I probably need to be a bit better, I think. But yeah, I think just having someone there as a role model would have been, like I said, monumental for me at that age.
Okay, so just following on from the role model aspect, what for you do you think a positive, inclusive future looks like for sports and members of the LGBTQ plus community?
God, these are so hard. These are really difficult questions. I don't know. You go first. Have you got something?
I mean, for me, it's in the tennis space, in particular in Wales. I'd like to see more clubs like ours across Wales. For the professional sport, again, I think just more openly gay players or openly LGBTQ plus players who actively celebrate that. There's so much potential, I think, if they want to grow these sports, and I think they sometimes think that celebrating difference is somehow going to somehow diminish the sport. And I think it goes back to the whole sort of rigidity of sport and the fact that there's rules and things. But I think if they were actually more openly sort of celebrating difference, then I think they would actually be more successful. I think it's a marketing mistake actually to not celebrate more sort of difference in how people identify. So from the sort of professional tour, it would just be more openly gay players. Nationally here in Wales, I just would like to see more clubs opening up, and really sort of going in different parts of Wales as well. So not just the cities, but catch-all areas, perhaps in the north, because that's a huge. Obviously, I'm from there, so I would love for that to be the case, because I think if I go back to how when I was 16, if there was something that was close by that I could have gone to, I think that would have, again, it might have changed sort of my how brave I felt at that time to be open about who I was. I think that's essentially what I would like to see, and also just the sporting organisations as well. Just the CEO of Tennis Wales actually is an openly gay man, so that's a huge I think plus for us, because we see that we see him in a successful role and in the sport that we love. So it's that's a huge thing. But again, in the other sporting organisations in Wales, they are small, but it would like to see just bigger diversity in those organisations as well, to represent not just LGBT people actually, but different ethnic minority backgrounds, and also pushing more on things like sport for people who have disabilities, because sport, as well as being very rigid and having these rules, I think it's adaptable as well. And I think I don't think it should be just for those who are fully able to enjoy. I think it should be for people who have different circumstances to enjoy as well. So
I think you hit on two like incredibly important points there, where, as you say, sport adapts, it evolves. There's no sport that we play now that is the same as it was when it was first codified in the late 1800s or early 1900s. And sport absolutely loves difference. It loves people that change the game and do something differently. When Federer came along and played in a far more graceful way than anyone had played before, we all loved him. Then Nadal comes along, a lot more muscular. Don't we all?
Really do.
Nadal comes along, plays in a different way, and everybody loves him. People love that change in the game in sport, and yet when it's this is my identity and this is someone different to who you have normally perceived to be an excellent tennis player or excellent badminton player, that's where it suddenly gets cut down. And as you touched on, there's an intersectionality with race as well. It's not just what your identity is.
There's just no, like, I would love to see a more level playing field, in that, like, you've seen how difficult it's been for women to be able to be represented in football. Like I'm going to show my ignorance. Was it the World Cup? Like a couple of years ago, the Lionesses won.
Last year. We didn't win. We lost the final.
Lost the final.
Very, very close and incredible.
I'm so sorry,
World
everyone.
Cup.
But like the fact that how much it took for them to kind of get there, and how much they had to fight in order to be kind of given the same level of respect that anyone else. Like, why, there's 19 million channels dedicated to sport. Why is there not a good couple more for different types of sport? And why are they not part of the mainstream? Why have they got to be kind of things that you can only go and see live in these small arenas? Why can't we go and play in the biggest national centres if that's what we want to go and do? Like, I know that there's obviously the gay rugby team. Why are they not training in the Millennium Stadium if that's where they want to train and that's where it's the best for them? Are they even allowed to? So I suppose for me, inclusion would look like if that's something that we want to do and that's where we want to be able to go. Like, why can't people? I can't even imagine the absolute pure like media sensation it would be as if someone who was gay in tennis then ran off onto the stage, and they just won or whatever, and then kissed their husband. Like, I can't even imagine what would come of that. Like, whereas it shouldn't. Does it need to be any of that? Do we need to even care that that's happened? That would be, to me, to be inclusion of everything is just available to people that want it, because we're all humans and we're all trying to do the same thing. And then if you're different, that's absolutely fine. Here's your opportunity to be different in the same sphere, in the same place as everyone else. You haven't got to do it in a special place. You can do it in the places that are relevant for you and that you need it for, Hopefully there are people that are listening to this and they're thinking, Baseliners and Red Kites sound like fantastic organisations. I really want to get involved. So, Lawrence, I know you said that you've got lots of members at the moment at the Red Kites, which is fantastic. Yeah. How can other people get involved? How would they reach out to you? So you can email us on redkitescardiff@gmail.com, or you can get hold of us on Red Kites on Instagram. We meet every Monday evening at 8:30 till 10:30. We're in the Swallock Centre, which is off Cathedral Road, and we play for all abilities, all genders, all kind of self-identifying, and we have training opportunities as well.
Neil, how would someone get involved with the Baseliners?
They can either message our Facebook, so we have a Facebook page which is just the Cardiff Baseliners. We also have an Instagram, which is at Cardiff Baseliners. We did have an X, but we've discontinued that for many reasons, mainly political, and then for obvious reasons. Yeah. And then they can also email us, which is cardiffbaseliners@gmail.com. And we train on Saturdays, 11 a.m. till 1 p.m. The first hour is coaching. The second hour is mixing doubles. It's for all abilities. So if you've never picked up a racket before, we have 2 coaches on a Saturday, and they essentially they take kind of a mix of the abilities, and they tailor the coaching according to your need. We also have a clubhouse, which is where we have our socials, and it's in Whitchurch in Cardiff, so very accessible with train and buses and things like that.
And you mentioned the social there. You've just had your Christmas social,
Yeah.
and there are people involved in both clubs. How was the social?
I've just about recovered. It was a very difficult day in work today. But yeah, no, it was really good. It was, I think we had about 45 in the end, all in that clubhouse, somehow fit in there. And we actually broke the record for spirits being sold in one night for the Whitchurch clubhouse. So there was a lot of gin, a lot of vodka. But yeah, again, it's not, if you don't want to drink, then that's fine as well.
I didn't
know
drink.
you
Had a
didn't. Yeah,
lovely
you
time.
didn't. You enjoyed
Lovely
yourself.
time.
There's
It'd
no
be
pressure.
interesting to
We
know
did a
how many
quiz, we did a
people
bingo.
didn't drink, and then you put into perspective the record that you just broken.
Yeah, so there's no pressure. We do other socials as well. So we do we do like tournaments as well within the club, and we tend to do that according to ability as well. So you're not playing against someone who's basically going to make it boring for you. So yeah, it's so we do the socials, and it's you can either just play tennis, or we can go for the hikes that we do sometimes, or we can go out to our different partners in Cardiff.
Well, thank you both so much for coming on the pod. I've really enjoyed getting to know more about the baseliners and more about the Red Kites, and I hope that off the back of this modest little pod, you might get a few people reaching out to get involved. I think it's also really important to kind of share the different experiences that we've all had in sport, because I'm sure that there are people listening who you'll have said things about your time in sport that will have chimed massively with them, and so we want sport to be an environment that everyone can be involved in, regardless of their sexuality, regardless of any aspect of their identity. So yeah, thank you for coming on.
Thank you very
It's
much.
been
Thank
great
you.
to
It's
chat.
been great.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you. Thanks.
Cheers.